Welcome to Crash Course Injury Law with Joe Ghabour.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Crash Course Injury Law with Joe Ghabour, founder of Joseph M. Ghabour and Associates. Joe's a personal injury attorney licensed in New Jersey, New York, and Florida, who helps injured people understand how accident investigations, insurance claims, and liability issues unfold after serious crashes. I'm Sean O'Connor, and today Joe and I are talking about hit and run accidents in New Jersey, including what happens when a driver leaves the scene, how these cases are investigated, and what options may still exist even if the at-fault driver is never identified. Hi, Joe. How are you?
I'm good, Sean. How are you?
I am doing okay. Having a good week. And hit and run is sort of not my favorite expression. uh, how do you classify it legally, Joe? What is a hit and run accident in New Jersey?
Yeah, unfortunately, hit and run accidents occur a lot more than we would like to see. So, a hit and run accident occurs when a driver involved in a collision leaves the scene without stopping to provide information, insurance, copy of the license, or failing to render assistance when necessary. So, New Jersey law requires drivers involved in an accident to stop and exchange information and, when appropriate, notify law enforcement. So, leaving the scene of the accident can actually result in criminal penalties and some serious fines.
Got it. Got it. I'm curious if I hit a car, like a parked car, and the driver's not there, and I leave this, is that hit and run, or is that a different violation?
No, that is actually hit and run. And a lot of times, those drivers, if they're caught, they will get not only, leaving the scene of an accident, they will get another summons for failure to report an accident. So it can get very complicated. So anytime there's property damage in excess of $500, you really need to notify the police. Failure to do so, and they find who you are, you'll end up getting a summons.
Okay, so now we notified the police, right? I'm curious, what happens just, in the hours after the police arrive and the other driver is gone?
Well, it all depends on the seriousness of the accident. So initially, any investigation is going to focus on gathering as much information as possible while the evidence is still fresh. In serious cases where there is significant bodily injury or death, the police will interview witnesses, they will document vehicle damage, they will photograph the scene, look for surveillance footage wherever they may find it, and search for physical evidence such as vehicle parts, paint transfer, or debris. The sooner the information is collected, the better the chances of identifying the fleeing driver.
When they're obviously doing the investigation, gathering evidence, is there certain evidence that's more important from your experience when they're trying to identify the vehicle or the driver?
All evidence is important. Even small
Yeah.
details
Well,
can make a huge difference. So, witness
yeah.
descriptions, partial license plate numbers, surveillance footage of any sort, dash cam recordings, physical evidence that can be left behind at the scene, all of those become very critical. Sometimes something as a damaged mirror or a bumper fragment or paint sample that may have transferred, that can help narrow down the make and the model of the vehicle involved.
How often, I'm curious, how often do they actually uh, catch the driver after leaving the scene? I'm sure you don't have a specific data point, but I mean, is it like half the time, most of the time?
Truth be said, it all really all depends on how serious the case is. So if it's a parked car and there's minimal damage,
They're not going to try that hard.
they're not. I mean, they're not going to waste their time on something that, is not going to be, very serious. Um, if it's more serious injuries, or death, the police is going to, not leave a stone unturned to try to find out who the other driver was. So they'll interview, eyewitnesses if anybody saw anything. They'll look for surveillance footage, look for vehicle debris, like we said earlier. So they'll do whatever they can if it's serious injury. Unfortunately, a lot of times the person who is the offending driver in this situation is not caught because either
I was kind of like, what happens? What happens when they don't catch the guy? I mean, or the person?
if they don't catch the person who hit the car and fled or hit the person and fled, the person is going to have to rely on his or her insurance policy to compensate them for the damages. So let's say, a hit and run vehicle struck a pedestrian, and that pedestrian is in, he has a vehicle at home and has, personal injury protection coverage through his auto policy. His insurance company is going to cover his medical expenses. If another driver hits a car and, doesn't stop and there's damage to the car, the owner of that vehicle, if he's got collision coverage on his automobile insurance policy, that policy will cover the damage to the vehicle. So more often than not, there's going to be recourse for the person who is the victim in these situations. It's only when people don't have insurance or don't have a car or don't have proper coverage on that car that they end up really getting the short end of the stick.
And I'm curious how do the insurance companies handle it? I mean, how do they evaluate a hit and run claim if there is no, there's no driver to point a finger at and say, okay, you're at fault here.
Well, if you're involved in an accident with a hit and run driver, and you are unable to locate that driver, you still have to make a police report. You still have to
Mm.
contact your insurance company and let them know that you were involved in an accident with a person who has fled the scene. In New Jersey, you are required to carry what's called uninsured motorist coverage as part of your policy.
Yep.
That will cover you in the event somebody else hits you and then flees the scene. So you should be okay provided you have sufficient coverage in your uninsured motorist coverage. So it's always important to know what kind of coverage you have on your policy because, again, it's a contract. You pay the premium, your insurance company is required to cover you for any covered loss. Being involved in an accident with an uninsured driver or being involved in an accident with a hit and run vehicle, your policy will kick in and will cover you.
Given your practice and the years you've been doing this, we were talking about, sometimes the smallest piece of evidence can turn a case. Is there a hit and run case in your sort of uh, portfolio, if you will, that stands out where that kind of thing happened, where a small piece of evidence ended up solving the case, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, without going into any specific details, we had the case once, and the individual was driving on one of the New Jersey highways, and a vehicle was racing another vehicle, and it
Hmm.
sideswiped our client's vehicle. And by doing so, her vehicle went off the road. She had the car flip over a couple of times, and she was injured. Of course, nobody was around to see the other vehicle's license plate number. So she was kind of in a situation where she was involved in this accident, pretty serious accident. The other driver fled.
Mhm.
The police came right away, but they couldn't find the other driver, and our client was seriously injured, and we had to rely on her uninsured motorist coverage to get her compensation for the injuries that she had. Luckily for her, her policy was a good policy, and as a result, her injuries were covered not only from the perspective of getting compensation for pain and suffering, but also for her medical bills, because as a no fault state, New Jersey requires you to carry personal injury protection coverage, and that covers your medical
Mm.
bills.
Yeah, I mean, a rollover, that's scary.
Pretty serious.
So what tends to have the biggest impact on whether a hit and run claim succeeds?
It's the same exact way we handle it as we would any other case. So we have to prove, obviously that the accident did take place. Usually that's not too hard to prove
Mhm.
if there's any damage to the vehicle, if there are any injuries, the police are called, within a reasonable amount of time. So the biggest factor is going to be the quality of the evidence that we collect immediately after the collision so we can prove that the accident really took place. So I can't stress enough, prompt reporting is very important. You must report the accident to the police. You must report the accident to your insurance carrier. Preserve any photos that you may have taken of the scene. If there are any witnesses, get their information, and you could take out your phone and just, speak into your notes app and say, the name of the witness and, their phone number so that you don't forget. Any surveillance footage that you can obtain.
Yeah.
So I always recommend that people really install dash cams. If your vehicle doesn't come with a built-in dash cam, buy a dash cam. They're not all that expensive from, Amazon or Walmart or whatever those companies are, and have it installed. It can save you a ton of headaches later on in proving that an accident took place or how an accident took place. So that's in terms of the aspect of liability. In terms of the damages and the injuries, medical evidence. We must have documented medical evidence, objective medical testing such as MRIs, CAT scans, things to show what the injuries really are. So any delay in getting medical treatment could lead to a weakened case. Any delays in getting any evidence in general could, result in a case not being as strong as it should be, given the circumstances.
Yeah. The passage of time. I mean, there is obviously regulation, right? Like, is it X number of hours you must report to the police or to your insurance company by law?
Well, it's not codified as you have to report it within 20 hours or 14 hours. It's really all it's a reasonableness test. So if a person gets involved in an accident and that person falls into a coma and there's nobody around and wakes up a day later, he can still call the police and say, I was involved in an accident, I think a day or two ago. I just woke up. It happens. Um, yeah, I mean, it all depends on reason. Now, if you have a fender bender and you don't report it for 3 months, we're gonna have a problem.
Good to know. Well, Joe, we're up against time here, but as always, good to talk with you. And thanks for sharing your knowledge with us. And I look forward to connecting in the future.
Thank you. See you next time.
That's it for today's episode of Crash Course Injury Law with Joe Ghabour. To learn more about hit and run accidents, uninsured motorist coverage, and your rights after a crash, visit GhabourLaw.com, where you'll find clear, practical resources to help you understand your options and protect your interests after an injury. Thanks for listening, and don't forget, maybe leave a review, subscribe to the show so you don't miss the next episode. I'm Sean O'Connor. Have a great day.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.